Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. It's pretty nice out there at the moment. I'm, of course, recording this at 12:30 a.m. the night before the episode drops. So, is that so I can make this intro as fresh as possible, or is it because I have put off recording the intro until the very last thing? And yes, it is the latter. Hey, look, today was very crowded. Included picketing. It included going to a pool party. I gotta say, okay, so Naomi and I picket anywhere that's like within a 15-20 minute radius of our place, which means Netflix or Paramount or CBS. You know, there's a couple other places, but I gotta tell you, Paramount, every time we go picket Paramount, they have blank signs. Now, remember, we are in day, I think, 109 or so of the WGA strike. So to find a blank sign to write your own, I gotta say, charming, hilarious slogan on, like today, I said more like AMPOS, and I underlined the POS. If you don't know, the conglomeration of the studios and networks is the AMPTP. So to call them the AM piece of shit, I mean, if that doesn't win the strike on its own, such a stinging aspersion. Anyway, I'll report back next week if that somehow does win it for us. By the way, very good episode today. I'm talking to musicians Pat Place and Cynthia Slay, and if you don't know who they are, I'm going to read you their bio right now. Both originally art students, musicians Cynthia Slay and Pat Place moved to New York in the 1970s and were soon sucked into the music scene. Pat became one of the founders and the guitarist of James Chance and the Contortions, and then in 1979 the two formed Bush Tetras. Their debut 7-inch EP, Too Many Creeps, was released in 1980 on 99 Records. And even though they only stayed together for another 3 years, the band was an integral part of the downtown New York no-wave scene. The band has reformed twice since then, once in the late 90s, and most recently in the mid-aughts, and they've been going strong since. Their latest album, They Live in My Head, was just released at the end of July on Wharfcat Records. And my friends, it's fantastic. Yeah, this was an absolute delight to talk to Cynthia and Pat. If you've listened to the show before, you know that I am very obsessed with the downtown New York art scene of the late 70s, early 80s. I wanted something of that energy when I moved there. It was long dead by the time I got to New York, but it is a kind of idée fixe in my brain. So it was cool to talk to them about, making art in that atmosphere. And we talk about a lot of other things too, so I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you do, why not subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from? Listen to other episodes. Write a review. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Blue Sky, I guess. I don't know if anyone's really paying much attention there. But at Andy Beckerman on all of those. Guys, friends, we're almost at episode 600. We got a couple other ones. Nothing big. Teenage Fan Club, Will Oldham on the way there. So stay tuned for all of that. But for now, let's talk to Cynthia and Pat. So Los Angeles, there's San Francisco, Chicago, New York, New Orleans. These to me are like cities. Like they have a personality to them. There is something more to them. And then Los Angeles is just like, I'm from Pennsylvania, and it's just a warmer version of Pennsylvania. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm here because I have to be here for work, and that's it.
Well, I mean, overall, the weather's pretty good, and it's definitely a kind of urban sprawl, I would say. But, there's parts of it I like, and I don't know. It's got such a cool history. I think when I go there, I feel that like kind of Hollywood history, and
yeah,
I love that, but I know there's way more to it than that.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, but it's weird how that history is constantly erased. Like in New York, I can walk past buildings that were there when New York started. I can be on
Yeah.
like 14th Street and be like, oh yeah, that was there in revolutionary times or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And then here it's just you have to really go to in New York. It seems like the history permeates the entire city, even if you're not walking past a brownstone from 1786 or whatever, right? The history permeates the city. Here
Right.
it's just a bunch of strip malls that are like anywhere else in America, and
Yeah.
you have to be in a very specific area to feel that history, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pat.
I mean, I was in Hollywood Hills, and there's cool houses that are, it's like Sunset Boulevard, it's
Yeah.
cool. But I found it like the car culture and it's so isolating. It just didn't suit me because I'm such a New Yorker in that way. I like walking. I like taking the subway. I like being around people. Like I'm in Queens now. I can go out and I'm like, oh, it's really hot today. And everybody's like talking to you. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It
There's
suits
more
me.
street culture in New York for sure.
Yeah.
Was that in the 70s when you both moved to New York? Was it just like New York? Oh, this is where I can go to make art at this time, or was there more of an allure? Was there that like, oh, this is the place to be? I mean, what was it about New York that attracted you when you moved there originally?
Oh, for me, I was fresh out of art school in Chicago, and I went there with a friend, and I thought, okay, I have to be here, downtown, Lower Manhattan. And, I was lucky enough to, I finished up at in Saratoga Springs last summer credits and met some kids that were kids. Well, they weren't kids to me. They're kids to me now. That were staying down in Soho, which was where the center of the art world was at that time in the mid 70s. And so yeah, I thought I have to be here. But then for me, and then I'll shut up and let Cynthia answer. But it was I started off in the art scene and had a few shows. I was working doing it, but I started going to CBGBs every night, like. And that changed my world totally. But it was a place to go because it was affordable at that time because it was bankrupt and burnt out and people didn't really want to be, especially Lower Manhattan. So you could go there as a young artist and, work at Pearl Paint, which I did, and, pay your rent, which is not possible these days. But so it was kind of a melting pot of all, like, let's just say called all the black sheep from all over the country sort of ended up out of art schools and music or whatever and film in New York at that time. A lot of us did. That's the end of my answer.
Yeah. And yeah, I came after Pat. I came like at least 4 years later. I came in 79 and it was the same thing out of art school. And I had listened to all this music and I was from Cleveland and there was a lot of music. There were really good radio and I'd heard the Voidoids. I'd heard a lot of the Blondie and seen them play live in Cleveland. And I thought, oh my God, it's great. And then I went to visit and I remember walking down and I saw Pat play with the Contortions at this place on Bleecker Street. And I knew Adele Berthet. So I'd heard about the show and I walked all the way down from Times Square, which was I just felt like, oh, I belong here. It's so cool. And then I saw the show and it was like a spectacle. I was completely in love with that band. It was such a great band and wild, like crazy. And I knew like I'd landed in the right place.
That wasn't going on in Cleveland.
No, there was some, but there was like
cool.
Peruba. There was really good music, but it was just like one step a little more tweaked, and then just all the people, all the arts kind of combined together downtown. So you had filmmakers and dancers and actors and musicians and artists, and everybody kind of had the same, outlook on life and what was going on in the country. And so you just felt like you belonged there. And that was kind of the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere.
Yeah.
When both of you moved to New York at your separate times, did you go with any specific ambition, or was it just, I just got out of art school, this seems like the place to be, and I'm just going to go and see what happens? Or was there a plan? Even if that plan even if you didn't follow the plan, was there an original plan?
No. No, it was just get there. This is where it's happening. I want to be there because I like the vibe. I like what's going on. The art was like the best art, that you could find. And the city just vibrated with life and energy. And I mean, I had no idea that I was going to end up, a couple years after I got there, like falling in love with the music scene and CBGBs, like Cynthia was saying, the Boy Days of playing television, Ramones, and any night you'd go over there, that was what was going on. And Max's Kansas City too at that time. And then, came No Wave, and that kind of knocked all those kind of punk, but everyone would come through and play CBs, like all the English bands. And so you could just go there every night, the B-52s, the Police, the U2 played the Mud Club, before they even had a following. So everyone would, stop and play in the city. So that definitely caught my attention more than what was going on in the art world, which was pretty interesting also.
Right, you, Cynthia.
Yeah, and I didn't think I was going to be in a band. I mean, I came to, I think, design clothes, and I was going to go to Fashion Institute. But I had this magnetic pull. I mean, it was very strong. I don't know, not to get too spiritual, but it was like I could feel myself being pulled there, like I was supposed to be there. And when I got there, it just, I don't know, it was kind of, wasn't really the peak, I guess. In some ways, it was like the peak in 79, 80, Pat, I think. Because there was like just a lot going on with the art world too. But the art world and the fashion world really turned me off personally. I felt like the fashion world was really male dominated, and it would have taken me forever to get anywhere with it. And I just felt like there was so much opportunity with music. We didn't know how to play or sing but you could do it. It was like this DIY thing. You just do it and you're expressing yourself creatively. And I knew I wanted to be a creative person. That was very clear. I didn't really want to do some corporate thing. So
and
the other scenes.
Couldn't.
Yeah,
we tried, Cynthia. I mean, we both had so many crazy jobs, and it's like there's just no way I couldn't do that. I couldn't not fit myself into that world. I didn't get it.
Right.
I didn't fit. Yeah, it wasn't meant to be.
Yes, much to the parents' chagrin, It was just not like I was the last ditch effort, my parents thought maybe I could be a doctor or something. No. Then I ended up being the worst one in a rock band.
Okay.
Nothing worse than that.
Nothing worse than that.
Wait, let me talk about that, because this seems very familiar to me.
Yeah.
The disappointing the parents.
Yeah.
Did they okay, what was your family life like? What did they expect? There's a lot. I'll just throw it at you and have, respond to whatever you feel like responding to. Did you grow up in Cleveland? And then Pat, I want to talk to you about your family. What did they expect from you? What did they do? All of this kind of stuff. I'm just curious to what then you come out of to then be able to be like, actually, I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah. Well, like the abridged version. They wanted me, my dad wanted me to be a physical therapist, and he wanted me to be a doctor, and I was good in school, but I had an art scholarship, and he was an artist, but he didn't think it was, I had a lot of culture in my family and music and art, but they looked at it as it was not an occupation and it scared them. It was like, well, you can't go into art. They didn't support me as an artist. And, I feel like they could have been worse. They rolled with it. They still spoke to me. I think when I had a brief stint out in San Francisco living with, I think it was worse.
Richard Rainbow.
With, Richard Rainbow. Thank you, Pat. Who was an albino guy that was
We
like
finished
living on
each
Main
other's
Street.
sentences at this point.
And that was the low point. So my dad stopped talking to me. But I feel like eventually they went to the class show. They tried. They were afraid for me because of the drugs and the scene more than anything. And they didn't take it seriously. They looked at it as a waste of time, really. And that was because they're depression parents. Like our parents grew up during the Depression. So they're like, man, do not mess around with this stuff that's not going to ever make you any money. But I didn't really care about money. I still don't really care about money.
Yeah. Wait, even though you said your dad was an artist, was he a professional artist or what kind of artist?
No, it was a hobby. He was a sculptor and he would never look at it. I mean, he point blank told me, you cannot make a living as an artist because that was his narrative that was going on in his mind. And he had to support his mother. And so it was, and it was no joke back then, man. Then people really, had to support their parents.
Yeah.
So he just thought he wanted better for me than that. I mean, it came from a good place and everything, but he didn't really see me. I had to even tell them later on, I remember my mom saying, I thought you gave up that silly thing a long time ago. And I had to say, Mom, you got to accept this is part of me. I really love doing this. I'm always going to do it. You're just going to have to, at age 90, can you just get in my corner here? Yeah. So you had the same thing, kind of.
Yes. Well, it's slightly different. You're younger than my parents, but I think close, because my grandparents were Depression era.
Yeah.
And so, and also my parents are first generation, right? My grandparents, yes, emigrated here from Eastern Europe, pre-Holocaust. They're coming over, but still anti-Semitism, just not the,
right,
being put in trains. And which is a fun way of saying it. But they grew up, so they're the first generation that went to college, and I think they had the expectations of certain things. And then I was supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer, something like that. And I tried to do what they wanted. It obviously did not take. And it's the same thing, Pat, I think when you were saying about trying to fit in with corporate culture. There's something I can't do it. I can if I'm forced to, but it feels awful. It's just you're just inside in your head screaming, for 8 hours a day.
Yeah. And, I have friends who do it and I say, oh, God bless, man. And they don't mind. They like it. They're making really good money. It's just not me. I actually can't do it. So, but yeah, my scenario was similar to Cynthia's. They wanted me to go into commercial art and I, just would only do fine art in college. And then I just left. They did not, approve of pretty much of anything I was doing. So I went to New York and did my thing. And that was that. I think on my father's deathbed, he did say to me, I'm sorry I never got to see you play.
Oh man.
Which I actually really appreciated.
Yeah.
That is heavy though.
It's deep, man. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing that it even occurred to him, honestly, because, anyway.
It's probably weighing on him, Pat.
Yeah, I think a lot.
You think about that stuff I've heard on your deathbed, regrets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time, maybe too much time, imagining, I'm like, what would I regret? And then let's do the opposite of that. in order
Yeah.
to, so that I'm not there. I guess like now, it's not, it's like what, there's nothing. I don't know. Eat fewer mozzarella sticks. I guess not, there's not really much.
Je ne regrette rien. Yes. I mean, regretting is just such a waste of time too, because, you can't take it back.
Yeah.
Just gotta move forward.
So try to live in a way that you won't have regrets.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. But yeah, just cut out the mozzarella sticks and you'll be good, Andy.
We'll see. But wait, okay. So you had the weight of your parents' expectations. It took me a long time. I didn't say this exactly, but it took me a long time. It took me, I would say, until my late 20s to escape the gravity of their expectations. And you both got out from under their expectations earlier. And I'm kind of curious, is it just a quirk of your personalities? What gave you the distance, or what gave you the ability to escape give you the escape velocity? I guess if we're going with this gravity metaphor, to get away from those expectations and do the thing you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's a weird one because, I have two sisters and they kind of were much closer. I was like, Pat, I just left. And I feel like I was such an adventurer. I'm still an adventurer. I'm just an old adventurer. But I like, there wasn't any holding me back. It's like I wanted to do it and there was like no stopping me. And I can't even, I mean, I kept in touch with them and they moved to New Jersey and I got to see them, but I don't know. I was very determined to experience things and just be, I just fell in love with New York City. I just thought, okay, I'm doing this. It's like, I don't know, Pat, right? You just feel like you don't have a choice.
Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, in my particulars, I had an older brother who was an amazing piano player, and he was kind of a musician, but my parents wanted him to be a lawyer. So he went to law school, and he died really early. I was 22 when he died. He was 6 years older than me. Anyway, that was kind of a traumatic event in my family and in my life. And at that moment, I think I was already in New York, but I had been in New York for a year at that point. But I kind of thought, okay, this is, you got to do what you want to do. Who knows how long we're going to be here and all that sort of thing. And yeah, I did, like I said, I visited New York when I was in art school and I thought, I need to be there. Just knew. And that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, and getting out of the parents' expectations, I saw what my brother went through, and that didn't really work out for him. So, and the story is much more involved and complicated, but that's the short version.
I mean, that's such a traumatic event to go through. Was it a conscious thought to yourself, like, my brother had this kind of like unfulfilled desire that he never got to even like approach, and I can't do that with my life? Or was it more like a kind of just like impulse inside you, and then later, you're articulating it, like here, you're able to articulate it? Like, was it an actual thought in your head?
What was the thought in my head was about doing art versus music. When that happened, I needed an outlet. I felt I needed an outlet, and the immediacy of performance I envisioned would give me a sort of outlet for my feelings, like that I could not really, I had nowhere to go with them because my parents weren't receptive, and there weren't very many adult or figures around that I could talk to. So yeah, I saw this immediacy in performing music that really appealed to me. So in that way, it did affect me. But no, yes, some of it was unconscious. Hey, Andy, I think your parents might have been on to something. You might be a great shrink.
Only because I've been doing this show for 13 years and I've gone through a decade of therapy myself. I don't think I would
No,
I would be
you're
too.
asking all the right questions.
I would be way too bored if I was, because if I had to do like, sometimes I'll go into like, so I do therapy like over Zoom with my therapist who's in like West LA somewhere, I think. And like half the time now I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Dystopia is descending upon us. And I would have to believe, like, it's just boring. Like, it's just like complaining because there's like, I don't know, what are you supposed to do? I don't know, deal with it, right? But like, if I was my therapist, I have to imagine, I keep asking her, I'm like, is this boring to you? And she's like, why? And then instead of answering me, she does the whole Freudian kind of just like, well, why do you, is that important for you to entertain me? I'm like, I don't know. I'm a comedian. That's what, like, that's the point of doing this.
It's such a shrink answer. Well, why are you asking that? What is that important? Yeah. Why is that important to you? Oh my God. It's funny. Really funny.
But no, it's curious to me because, and I asked those kind of questions because it was not a conscious thought in my head until like I was in grad school and it just wasn't working out. And then I was doing comedy on the side and it's really what I wanted to be doing. And then I moved to New York to do it. And then it felt right. It just felt right. And only later after therapy can I articulate it in this way. And so that's why I asked this question about my guest, because I'm like, you know, Cynthia, when you said earlier, like it felt spiritual, and I'm like, yeah, it is like that because it was this other feeling that I've only come to be able to articulate in doing therapy. Because it's not a conscious thought. It's just like once I was in that context of doing comedy, and you know, the comedy scene in New York was like really, it was both dying in some way in the mid to late aughts, and also a resurgence was happening in certain areas. And so there was this energy there that I would not say is like the late 70s, early 80s music scene of New York, but is, let's say, analogous in some way. Other like always be like UCB was like the CBGBs of comedy, and it felt like going there felt right. It just felt, it was like, oh, this is it. This is what I've wanted my entire life and could not say I wanted for fear of having to follow through. I guess for me, it was having to follow through. And I don't know if that was what your feeling was. Like, if I do this, this is my life, and I have to actually do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, you have to, like any entertainment business too, man, you have to be so tenacious, you know, you have to just persevere. And it's like, it has to be kind of a deeper love of it than just saying, I want to be famous, or I want to, you know, write a pop song or something. It has to be a little bit more deep than that. And I love what you said, Pat, about somewhere to put your feelings, like when you're performing, because that whole thing between fine art and music, right? And I'm going through that with Austin, my son. It's like he's good at both, and you have to choose. And there's that immediacy, and that it's so thrilling to write a song together with other people. It's different than when you're just painting or doing something solitary like that.
Yeah,
that's a real big pull. And you're in front of an audience when you're doing your comedy, and you get fed from that. It's such a great thing.
Yeah. When you first started making music, whether together or before that, right? Were you able to articulate your emotions or talk about your emotions outside of that? Or was this really the only opportunity you had to put your emotions into something? Or were you like able to, you know, get together with your friends and like actually talk through things or go to therapy or something?
At that time, I mean, I'm sure we were pretty tight, Cynthia and I and Laura. You know, I don't know, really can't remember what the hell we were talking about in those days, but no, there was no therapy. There were a lot of drugs. That was that was a form of therapy, of, you know, like not knowing how to deal. So let's numb ourselves out in some way or whatever people were doing with that. But yeah, sure. I don't know if there was, we were young. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of knowledge about like, oh, I'm feeling this, and like we can do that now and understand what's going on a lot more. But I don't know. What do you think, Cynthia?
No, I didn't know what I was feeling. I was so stupid. I mean, I was just like, just reacting. I was getting in a lot of trouble. No, I didn't have really a lot of self-awareness, and I wasn't in therapy, and I think I internalized a lot because no, we weren't taught. We were going out all the time. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to sit. We were really busy on tour. We didn't, Pat and I hung out a lot, but we weren't necessarily talking about our feelings, I don't think.
Probably not. But Cynthia, it did come out through the lyrics somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was always like we had a lot of difficulties looking the way we did and being outside of, the norm. So that's where a lot of those songs came from. Creeps and even funky, it's like us against the world, kind of weirdos unite. We were really well aware of that, and everybody else that were in different things, like the artists, fine artists like Jean-Michel and Keith Haring and people, the same thing. You're just kind of making a statement about the state of things, because then it was right before Reagan, but it was the same issues, really. Not that much has changed, unfortunately.
And not that much except everything, but yeah.
It's just gotten worse, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, it does seem a little worse.
Yeah.
But I feel I was like so naive in a way and really wrapped up in drama and things like that. I look back and I look at some journals and what I was writing. I'm like, oh my God, read a book, or I don't know, something. We were reading. I read a lot in high school and earlier, but it's like we weren't even really. We were just doing. We were very busy. We toured a lot, right, Pat?
Oh yeah, from 80 to 83, it was kind of constant, like, and it happened so quickly. I think we had 6 songs, and it was just boom, off to the races. Like, we recorded with Ed Ballman, 99 Records, Too Many Creeps, and then everything just started happening really fast. I think, it kind of took us by surprise. We weren't really expecting that. And touring and recording and writing and rehearsing and playing. And when we weren't touring, we were playing a lot in New York City.
Yeah, we were busy.
Is there a point where you have a moment for self-reflection on either like, oh, what do we want to do with the band, or what do we want to do with ourselves, or any of that? Or was it just like wall to wall? Because for me, it was just like I was reacting a lot to up until some of that stuff started to break down because I wasn't being self-reflective. And then I'm like, wait, I gotta take a step back and try to like figure out both what I want to do and how I want to do comedy and all this other kind of stuff. Was that kind of the same way for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it fell apart, and then there was self-reflection. It was like fell apart in 83. And I mean, I personally watched the band like kind of crumble, and I thought, oh no, I have to get a straight job. That was very sobering. I was like, oh, and sadness about having the whole thing. Like we weren't smart about a lot of things in business, and
we're not smart.
We were not.
No.
Now we're really smart, Pat.
Oh, so
back
smart.
then we were not smart, and yeah, and it's like it was sobering. I had to go, oh my God, so I need to figure out what I'm going to do next, and it can't be a corporate job. So how am I going to navigate this, and why did it fall apart? You just have a moment while it's happening and you're in it. There is not much time to self-reflect. I mean, it was very heartbreaking when the band fell apart the first time for me. It was hard because we had so much chemistry and we had a lot of fun, but then
we burned it. We burned it down.
We totally
burned ourselves out and burned it down.
Oh, we did, Pat.
And then it had to end for a while.
When you said you didn't have, this is not exactly what you said, but business sense, something like not having business sense, because I didn't either up until, I mean, I still probably don't, but I have like an agent, so I can kind of like, maybe they can guide me in some way. And I've never had that sense like, oh, how to commodify something well or what to do. It always leaves me with a kind of like icky feeling, commodifying anything. And I'm wondering if that was the same feeling that you had. And then what was it like? You didn't know how to do it, or you like, it felt weird to do it?
Well, I think we didn't know how to do it. I think it all happened so fast that I was not paying attention to the business. I was not thinking about the future. I was probably thinking about the next gig or the next rehearsal, and we were in constant motion then. And we were in our 20s and, just kind of saw it as a big party and not like saying, oh, wait, we're going to be doing this 40 years from now. No, we never thought that. That's for sure. You know how you are when you're 20 and you think you're invincible and you don't care if you don't live past 30 and you have all those stupid attitudes. So yeah, we were kind of on a hamster wheel and just going and a lot of partying and burned us out. And not we didn't make smart business decisions in the sense of like, the way we signed record deals, or we'd go with this, we'd make a record here, we'd make a record there. There was nothing consistent. Go ahead, Cynthia. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that we had a booking agent that was also our manager, and he booked us into the ground. Nice guy. But it was like way too much because we were partying and we got really physically depleted and creatively depleted. So we come back and we had to regroup. We weren't writing songs and we didn't know which direction. And we kind of lost the ability to like communicate about what direction we wanted to go musically after the first few recordings. And then, we had an opportunity. I remember once some really good manager approached us and the consensus was, oh, you want, that'll be 25%. Fuck him. We're not giving him our money, and it was a good business move, but we were so smart alecky, because we thought, oh, we can manage ourselves. That was a disaster. We couldn't. And I don't think any of us had a strong business sense. And I think we've gotten a lot better, but we were cocky and thought we did in a way. We weren't going to give up any of our money, which is in the long run, that wasn't wise. But I think it was all we could do. Mm-hmm. Just the
we didn't know. We were pretty clueless, young and clueless.
Also, 25% is crazy. My agent gets 10%.
Well, it was booking. It was like, it was going to be 25% altogether. Sorry. So it was like 10% to the booking agent and 15% to the manager. But then we would have 70%, 75% left. Oh, look at that cat tail. Pat, look at that.
Wait, I can only see only two people. Oh, it looks like my cat's tail. Jesse,
I know, right?
He just broke in.
I've got an orange and white.
He pushed the door open, came in.
A lemur tail like Pat's cat.
Long and striped.
Yep. So all of this is very familiar. It feels very familiar to me. It's very like emotionally resonant. I'm like, yep, I get this. I'm kind of curious about, at the time, was there something in the fine art and fashion world, like when you go to New York and you're like, well, we have these choices, whether it be in the fine art / fashion world or in the world of music. Was there any like class distinction? Because in my mind, like fine art and fashion too are these very like, I'll say hoity-toity kinds of artistic enterprises. Whereas, like when I was in a band, we were playing in basements in Pittsburgh and things like that. And it feels more real and more immediate and more connected.
Oh yeah.
And more, I would say, like working middle class than middle class than those other things. And I'm wondering if you felt that distinction in, the late 70s in New York.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, in the art world, there were, the blue chip artists and the blue chip galleries, but there was a kind of side scene of kind of, we had this punk art show that in Washington, D.C. that a lot of us, put our art in and went down there, and that was kind of a big deal. So they were looking for younger artists with a little bit of edge. And I was more involved with that scene, which, but yeah, it's a way, way more formal. And yeah, I mean, then, with the music, you could kind of do anything you wanted. And that's what we did. And I mean, you could do that with art too, but yeah, it's different. I mean, there are so many realms of fine art world that, I mean, there's a lot of cool things that go on still, I think, but it's often connected with galleries and museums, and so there's not quite the freedom that you would have with playing a club that wasn't going to restrict you in any way, or a basement. We played plenty of those kinds of places too.
Yeah, especially on the first tour. But yeah, in the fashion world I got really turned off by it. It was an easy decision because I liked designing clothes and I was making interesting things that I thought was going to, revolutionize, the fashion world. But the reality was, it's business. It was really, really business. Not that music is not a business, but there was this DIY thing that was happening that you just got caught up in because you felt it was possible. When I was doing the fashion thing, I felt like no one was interested. It was very defeating. So I quickly got turned off. Plus, I didn't have enough passion for it. I mean, I like clothes, but I feel like music is more of you're right. It's like a working man's thing. Like music it brings so much to people. They can hear some lyrics and then it really means something to them. I never had anybody say that about an outfit, like I would design. It was more like you got into the core of changing people's lives a little bit and how they look at things.
Yeah, and I'm sure you brought some of your fashion sense to the music and to the stage, Cynthia. I mean, you love David Bowie, and he, I mean, you probably would have been happy if you were designing for him, but that's not how to make it. And, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, I did make all those little outfits for us, Pat, the first gig.
Yeah, she did.
I put it to work.
And we had to wear them.
Yes. They were striped. And then we had some ridiculous bandana phase. Yeah, we had a look. We were into our look.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely clothes. You can express a lot with clothes, but there's something a little bit more like with the music. It's a little deeper.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's the immediacy of it, right? And you've said this before, right? There's that immediacy. And I'm curious, were you missing that immediacy in your life before that? Once music entered your life, you're like, oh, right, this is the thing that I've been looking for, and I didn't know it. Like, what were your lives like prior to finding music as the capital T, the thing?
Yeah. For me, it was definitely that, because I was doing visual art, and it's a solitary pursuit, and it was it's so much. This I was doing with my friends. We were like, having a good time, together, creating together, and it was, and then performing. It was. Even though I think Cynthia and I were both really shy performers,
yes.
But you still feel it. Like, you write something and then it's possible to have a gig the next day and play that song out, right? The next day after you've written it. And that was really exciting.
Yeah, and creating the songs, because you're stirring the soup in there. You're in the rehearsal space and one person has an idea, and that's super exciting. Like how songs are formed and they come out of like the nethers. It's like, who can explain it? It's such a weird thing. And, just being able to be with these people and create that in a second. That's a real immediacy. I mean, that. Yeah.
I mean, we did spend hours and hours just like, jamming and, in this rehearsal spaces, all our various crazy rehearsal spaces. But that's what we do practically every day, especially early on before things started going. We just get together and play.
Yeah.
I mean, when you were growing up, so in Cleveland and Chicago, did you have a lot of friends? Was there, I'm trying to figure out like when you were younger, was there some kind of immediacy you were missing that maybe music filled in? I mean, this is a stretch, but I'll ask and see what happens.
There you go. Being the shrink again. Yeah, well, I had, one sibling and he was 6 years older. So it's kind of a little bit like being an only child. But the stuff that was happening when we were that age, in the 60s with the music was unbelievable. And not that we ended up doing anything like that. But for me, art and music just was that was a source of inspiration and relief. Like, okay, I was in the suburbs of Chicago. It was straight. It was boring. And I did not relate. And so, tapping into art, tapping into music. And I had friends and we would do it together. A lot of us, we'd always go, oh, the new album, the new this or that. And but I wasn't playing music at that time, because I went to art school. But yeah, growing up, it was a little isolating. So I think maybe, working with a group there was definitely some sort of satisfaction and joy in that of not being so, solitary and isolated. Yeah. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Like I was like profoundly lonely growing up, but I mean, I had siblings, but it felt really other than, and I was very, I read a lot. I read all the time or drew. And that's what I did. I had very few friends in Cleveland. I was in the suburbs. I felt like a freak. And I think I didn't really lose that until I moved to New York. And I really hate like little cliquey things, like little group thingies. But it wasn't that kind of feeling. It was more of like this camaraderie where you kind of knew everybody had your back, even though we had other bands that played totally different music than us, but they were supportive. They'd come see you play. And I'd never had that before. And I think that made me feel really great. And the band, just having 4 people to connect like that with, I didn't even dream that could happen when I was sitting by myself with the Dachshund in Cleveland, reading Dostoevsky all summer, like I was a little weirdo.
Yeah, the band's become like a little family unit, even though there can be a lot of dysfunction like any family. But definitely it was like family, I think. And Cynthia and I still are like sisters.
Yeah. Much different, it's like people, it doesn't usually happen, Pat. We're really lucked out because a lot of people don't get along like this,
Oh, I know.
Look at Metallica. But we really, I don't know. We spend vacations together and stuff. We have similar likes and things. It's nice.
Yeah.
So lucky.
Cynthia, when you said profoundly lonely,
mm-hmm.
like, was it just a quirk of your personality? Like you just didn't fit in? or, like I grew up Jewish in a Christian area, and it's shorthand for saying that's how I was like kind of like on the outsides of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm always curious about other people's,
Yeah,
how
I think I grew like 9 inches in one summer. So when I was going into seventh grade, I went from like 4'11" to 5'8", and I didn't gain any weight. And I mean, I was freakish looking. And I also was obsessed with like stories in Europe and things that my other friends were not interested, other classmates weren't really interested in that. And I got really interested in politics and things, but I just couldn't find like-minded people. So yeah, I was really lonely. And my sisters went off, they were older and they went off to college like Pat had. So you were really by yourself with these suburban parents, and you're each in your own little room. And yeah, I spent a lot of time alone, like a ton of time alone. And I don't know if that was so healthy, but it did. I mean, I read some amazing things, and I did some cool art, and I was able to. That was some release. Like the art was that was like a gift. I looked at it. It's a gift when you can do that.
Yeah. And for me, I was like a skinny kid who I knew I was gay, and I kind of had a boyish look, and I would get a lot of like, are you a boy or girl? When I was in like 6th or 7th grade, just like bullshit, like kind of shit like that. So yeah, I definitely felt like an outcast, did not fit in to the, I didn't go to the prom. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well then.
Me neither, Pat.
Oh, well, we missed out, I think.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Did you want to fit in? Was there like any desire, or was it just like, no, I'm me and I know this sucks and I know the prom sucks and I'm just biding my time until I can go to art school or go to New York?
Yes. I really didn't want to fit in. I remember a girl asking me, and she was kind of homely and, skinny. And she was like, I'm going to try out for the cheerleading. This was like 6th grade or 7th grade or something. And I said, well, I'm not. She's like, what? Are you kidding? You don't want to be a cheerleader? And I was like, no way. No, I really didn't like that. I felt like it was really not beneath me, but like, so foreign. Like, I just thought there's no way I never fit into it. I knew, I was really aware I wasn't going to fit into it, but I didn't really think it was that great to have to fit into it. Like normal was so over amplified. Like, this is normalcy. So what? Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, I the same. It was like, another disappointment for my mother. She wanted me to be a cheerleader, and I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. I
could just see that, Pat.
I mean, I basically stuck to the art department. Even in high school, I was just that's where we hung. That's where we hung.
Yeah, I asked it just because I had this weird contradiction where I thought it was dumb. I'm like, or I didn't know if I even could articulate that. It was just like in my head, I'm just like, I don't want to do what they're doing, but I wanted them to accept me for me. So it was this constant push and pull where I'm like, I'm going to be and then, I had friends like but like people, outside of that circle where I'm like, no, I want you to accept me, but I'm not going to do anything to make you want to accept me, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I couldn't figure out why they wouldn't accept me. It was a mystery. Probably still a mystery. It's like, can't we all just get along? Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't there any of that 60s flower child stuff going around still in the 70s? Any of that, like, we should all be one happy family?
Well, I don't know. The 70s kind of there's lots of assassinations and things going on after the late 60s.
By the time we were making music, that was well over. But oddly enough, we did have that sort of community, in Lower Manhattan with each other, with the filmmakers, with the painter. But I don't think it was coming from the hippie movement anymore. at that point.
Yeah, the
But
hippies,
when I was young, I thought the hippie movement was super cool. I loved it.
yeah. I even moved to San Francisco in 75, but it was done. So it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah,
bunch
by
of
that time.
acid casualties. It was really violent. It was not, wasn't a fun moment. It was right before punk hit too, so it was just bleak.
That was a weird time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it just like a bunch of cults hanging out and then people like who had taken acid?
Acid casualties. So they, they were not functioning. There was a lot of homeless people and wandering and, like damaged and there was a lot of drugs, like harder core drugs coming in. And I mean, I saw someone stabbed. I mean, it was a lot.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was very intense. It was in Haight-Ashbury and it was done. So it was the fallout because, the flower children had left. They weren't there.
I do think that Altamont did really put an end to that. That was 71, because the guy got stabbed by the Hells Angels, and it was like, okay, here we are, people, love and peace. But is it? No, it didn't work out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
At the time,
humans.
At the time, could you feel the souring of that, or is it only in retrospect that you're like, oh yeah, there's, Altamont or Manson family or wherever you want to like really like draw the line as the end of the quote unquote 60s?
I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Pat, because you're a little.
No. I think there was a certain. Yeah, there was a certain awareness that it was over, but I think looking back into history now, we see the Manson and all of it. It's really been clarified of how it all went down and why. Go ahead, Cynthia.
No, I was just going to say it's so tied in with like civil rights movement, and there was a lot of hope that things were going to change, and then once again they didn't friggin' change. And I think the younger people, a lot of them became corporate, and then you look at that, like that is wild, to go from being a flower child to part of the system.
Do you think witnessing that, seeing that change in people go from being hippies to basically then eventually just Wall Street kind of drones, do you think that contributed to your I don't want to be part of this feeling?
Well, maybe, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, I just remember being a kid and my parents would have Life or Time magazine on the table, and it would be like pictures of Woodstock or the hippies, and I thought, cool, but yeah, sure. I think some people did go, say, give up on the dream and go the other direction. Yeah. Oh my God, your cat looks exactly like mine. It's so funny.
Squee, please.
Yeah, I got to get Jesse over there.
I know. Jesse, come here.
Yeah, I think things like, these eras, they just kind of overlap and evolve into something new, and it's like you could see the writing on the wall, because it was hard to keep that up, because the reality was, where is the money? Where is the machine? The machine's still in place, and we're not losing the machine. I mean, I was like boycotting head lettuce and grapes, and I was very active in Native American rights, and I think that's thanks to my family, where they were involved. But you could see nothing really changed. You could try to do that, and I think it helped. I thought maybe the music could change something. The music we were doing might be able to change something, or change people's perspective or something.
Mm.
Yeah, and supposedly, punk hated the hippies, and there was that whole dichotomy that I just thought, oh, whatever, the hippies brought us some great music. That's undeniable.
And, they stopped the Vietnam War. Hey, not so bad.
We're right at the very end. I'm just curious, not necessarily how did you meet, but how did you two become friends?
Do you want to tell the story, Patty?
Well, I was living with Laura Kennedy at the time. She was my girlfriend, and she had come from Cleveland, and she knew Adele, so I met Laura through Adele. And she came. She and Cynthia were in art school together in Cleveland. So one day, Laura and I were walking down the street in the East Village, and what was you and Barbara, right? Who had just arrived from Cleveland. I think Laura came about 6 months ahead of you. So we met, and we just immediately, it was kind of the four of us, like all the time, just always hanging out. And we just, Cynthia and I just became best friends kind of very quickly.
Yeah. And I had seen Pat play, of course, at that show.
Oh, right. I always go in the contortions then.
Yeah. And I'd seen her and I thought, oh my God, she's so cool looking. But she was so cool looking in the band. I mean, I think Adele was jumping up and down on the keyboard. And, it just was and James got in a fight and threw his mic and hit the guy in the head. They had to call the ambulance. It was
that was pretty much every night.
Yeah. But I was so happy when I met Pat because we were a lot alike. And, I felt like, immediately felt connected. It was good because it didn't scare me off seeing her in that crazy band. Just made it more appealing.
That's funny.
Oh man. Cynthia, Pat, thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time. This was so lovely to talk to you both.
Thank you so much, Andy. Really fun talking to you.
Yeah, and I hope it gets better there in LA for you.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, it literally has to. Our backs are against the wall in terms of the strike, at least. Like, if we have to win because there's no jobs if we don't. So that feels good.
Have to win.
I'll say this: it's the first time I felt community and solidarity with people here.
Yeah.
In the 6 years I've lived here, so I'll say there's like a silver lining.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
That is important.
Yeah, we're seeing it on the news of the actors and the writers protesting together. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, you have to win. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy, Steve Shelley's calling me. I got to go.
Oh, all right. All right. Well, have a great rest of your days.
You too, Andy. Thanks so much.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.